I'm here today to talk with you about 6 aspects of contemplative care and how we can apply these to people who are working with serious illness, vulnerability of aging, and dying. I came to this work through growing up in the 80s, 1980s, when the beginning of the AIDS pandemic, and our closest family friends, Jerry and Michael, became ill. And it was before they even knew what AIDS was. And so after school, in high school, it was very much about going to the hospital and spending time with Jerry and Michael and seeing how ordinary that was. It just became the after-school activity and spending time with those that you love. And also seeing how poorly they were treated, mostly because people are afraid of their sexuality combined with illness. And that was rather heartbreaking for me. And many years later, when I was in my 20s, I became the primary caregiver of my grandmother. And it was really around the same time that I was preparing to ordain as a Zen Buddhist monk. And we were in Brooklyn, where she lived, and we made a commitment to each other to care for each other. At that time, my father was living in Syracuse, and my aunt, her other kid, was living in Atlanta. And they were really concerned about her because she was 82 years old and living alone. My grandfather had died. And yet she was still working full-time. She ran a really amazing art dealer and law office. And we made a commitment on her couch. We were laying on our couch talking and decided that we would care for each other. And it was through that commitment that I started to learn really what it means to commit to care. And that's part of also what I want to talk about today. How do each of us commit to really caring, to going beyond what's convenient, what we feel like we can do, and see how we can extend ourselves. And through my experience with my Grandma Mimi, from occasional doctor's visits to ambulance rides to moving in with her into the hospice unit, I began to see through my eyes and her eyes how most people have such a difficulty just looking and being with what's happening, being with the person that you're with, that we're so preoccupied. And mostly, in her words, they're afraid to pay attention. And that really was quite painful for her. And many well-meaning, well-skilled people, and yet unable to just be with who they were with. And it's also like something that you can feel, like when someone walks into a room, whether they're really with you or they're kind of with you, or their body is in the room but their mind is elsewhere, something that we all know and experience. So it was through her experience also, she grew up Jewish and an immigrant. And what she began to see was that the people who were showing up and just sitting with her and being curious about her were people from our Zen Center. And what she began to see is that they weren't so afraid. And she would say, there's something really different about your friends and you and Chodo. What is that? And actually one night she woke me up and she was crying, and I was sleeping next to her, and she said, "I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Grandma, what are you sorry about?" And she said, for 87 years, I did not really understand what it meant to love. And to love someone fully is to love all the things about them, even the things you don't understand. And she said that there was a part of her that contracted from me because of my, as she called it, the Zen thing, which frightened her because it was so beyond her culture. And she was weeping, and she just said, "I'm so sorry." And for me, that was one of the most amazing teachings about how we contract in small and large ways, and how do we continue to learn how to open, which to me is actually the work of living, learning to see where we're contracted and where we can open. And it was the next day that she had this idea. She said, there's something to that Zen thing. I never thought I'd say this. But to really offer that to others, I want you and Choda to start some kind of organization where you train people in the Zen thing and how to care. Because it seems, she said, that there's something about that stillness that allows you to be more present. And so the honorary founder of our center is Grandma Mimi, from Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, which is incredibly sweet to me. One of the things that when we were starting our Zen Center, it's called the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, is that we saw that there's this very unique quality to really training your mind. And along with that, learning how to serve and to participate in a broader way. And so even the name of our organization was saying that we're here to train, and we're also here to care. It's for caring. It's not just for itself. I think that there's a habit that we all have to either get really into the care thing or really into the Buddhist thing. But how do we truly integrate them is, to me, an ongoing question that we all need to wrestle with and look at and investigate. And for me, one of the things that makes contemplative care what it is, it's the person's willingness to fully participate in their own daily meditation practice that is also embedded in a community and tradition, ideally with a teacher, and to see that their caring at the bedside is also part of that. It's just an extension of that. And the way that we work with that is through the first 6 of the Bodhisattva precepts that I want to talk about. And the first of the Bodhisattva precepts is the refuge of Buddha. Taking refuge is really to, in some ways, to bow down to a quality that is larger than ourselves. And just taking a moment to feel that. To bow down to the quality of Buddha, of awakened mind. And to allow yourself to really, many of us, I think, say that we're into mindfulness or contemplation or spirituality, but how much of our day do we actually pay attention? And how much of our day do we give in to distraction? So taking refuge in the Buddha is to take refuge moment by moment so that everything can teach you something. And for some reason, it's incredibly rare. So, in order to do that, we have to be willing to live by vow instead of by cause and effect. Many of us talk about how busy we are. I work with physicians throughout the country, and many physicians like, oh, I'm too busy. And I think it was Suzuki Roshi who said, if people say that they're too busy to meditate, they have to meditate double. So the kind of ability to really having acuity of our practice and acuity of mind is how we can develop and take refuge in Buddha. And the second one is taking refuge in the Dharma. And classically, the Dharma is the teachings of the Buddha. Here at our center, we think of it as everything has something to teach you. So it's actually cultivating and taking refuge, you could say, in receptivity. Really allowing yourself to be receptive to everything that's going on. The temperature on your face, how it feels in your body, and how you feel participating in the large one body. For us, it's so important to really consider how we're seeing ourselves as part of the whole. And in this way, we can actually learn from everything. Everything has something to teach us. It's amazing. So taking a moment just to reflect on how can I open up. A wonderful Zen teacher named Uchiyama Roshi said that the practice is really just learning how to open the hand. And for me, it is such an incredible teaching about just how do I keep opening the hand of thought? And how do you just practice that for at least a lifetime? That we never arrive. And the third of the precepts is Sangha, the refuge of Sangha, which is usually the most difficult for most people in the United States and Western countries. Belonging. Classically, of course, it means like the people who follow the Buddha way, but we think of it here as everybody. Taking refuge in Sangha is taking refuge in that you belong in the world. And for me, one of the ways to really learn about that in my own experience is to really participate in a community. Having a teacher, letting people see my vulnerability, and really experiencing others' vulnerability and noticing how my conditioned way of like, oh, I don't like that person, or I don't, whatever that is, looking at our aversion and learning how just to soften